It almost implies this idea that we only see people of the opposite sex as objects of sex, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but that so degrades people and like God's intent for relationship.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. We're here today on our friendships and dating series, and here's one more episode that we're going to talk about like a hot topic, and it's going to be friendships between guys and girls. So we have here, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Matt.
I'm Josiah.
I forgot to say my name. I'm Giulia.
And I'm Kolby.
And we're just going to discuss, so I'm actually friends with all of them.
Are we though?
Can we actually be friends? That's what we're going to talk about. The three of us are single, and Josiah is married. So we also have like different perspectives. I thought you were going to say like, no.
No, he's
Yeah,
flexing,
the ring. Yeah. So we're going to talk about it. I want a quick answer, and then we're going to discuss it. But yes or no, do you believe in friendships between guys and girls?
Yes,
Quick one.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
I would say yes. Okay. So let's start with you, Kolby, because you said no. You're the different one.
hear all right. Okay.
Why? Give
I think we gotta define like friendships.
Good. That's a good
Okay,
start.
because we may all have different definitions,
Yes.
which may affect the answers.
Yeah.
But when I think friend, like I'm not super fast to call someone like a close friend.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I say no, I mean like close friend, like someone in my circle. You know, I think like Jesus had the 70, then he had the 12, then he had the 3, and so for me personally, I wouldn't put a girl, you know, in the close circle for me.
Yeah.
So
That's fair. I think too with that
I
definition, I sort of understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess like when I think of somebody asks me, "Oh, can you be friends with girls?" I'm thinking to myself colloquially like friends. We use it so flippantly
Right.
that I'm like, okay, basically anybody across the board from acquaintance to like my closest friend, we seem to all call friends.
Totally.
But to
Yeah.
have that definition is kind of
Yeah.
helpful because I would say the same thing of like I don't. This kind of gets further into what I want to talk about later.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things, one of the things I'm most passionate about is like, okay, I'm not gonna get emotionally naked,
Right.
with a woman, right, with a girl, unless I'm married, right? But I'm not married, and so, well, I don't want to just not deal with those things in my life,
Yeah.
right? Like the Lord puts us in community to have brothers,
Yeah.
in my case,
Yeah.
who can call me higher. But I don't want to put those things in front of into a relationship that it could lead somewhere physically, spiritually, whatever it is, that's not appropriate
Right.
in a male-female relationship.
Yeah.
So from that
Yeah.
perspective, I understand exactly what you're
Totally.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of like, man, those close friendships, I need to be careful about what's in
Yeah.
that circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when I say yes to like male and female friendship, I look even like we're talking about like godly friendships, and you look at the Bible and you have friends that they are like close and they're going to support you and they are going to give you advice, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in my closest circle, because I also wouldn't put a guy like that I'm not engaged to be married in that circle, but in other aspects of friendship and defining friendship as like, hey, we hang out, we can talk, you know, like we're buddies here, you
Right.
know. So I would definitely have a guy friend in that circle of like my wide circle, but I wouldn't let him in like my close circle.
Right.
We were even talking about it a little bit earlier, but I wouldn't like pick up my phone. I'm going through a crisis, and the first thing I would do call a guy and like, hey, let me cry to you because I need help, you know?
Right.
Like, no, I actually would. Okay, no, and also it looks different even in my wide circle between like Josiah, Matt, and Kolby, because Josiah is married, so I probably won't call him. Like I call his wife if I need anything,
Right,
you know. Even like with Josiah, I was like, okay, the other day I needed to text him and his wife. I was like, okay, I'll do that in a group chat, you know. Like it looks different, and if I need to talk to Matt or Kolby, I'm like, okay, I'll give them a quick call, like I'll text them, like I don't have a problem with that. But it does look
Yeah.
different too when you have like a married friend and you have like other friends they're single. So give us a quick perspective on like friendships for you, even with girls while you're married.
While I'm married.
I know that we're gonna have a whole episode on it too,
Yeah.
but I just want to like a quick perspective on it.
Yeah. Definitely, like I personally don't like the word boundaries in any other aspect except for this one. just because you have to keep them at like arm's length, especially within marriage. You can't, I mean, there's like physical, emotional, spiritual, obviously, but a lot of that lies very much like within the physical. Like I'm side hugging if there's anything like that. No like closed doors, no one-on-one. Like I'm staying away from any rooms if there's a single female in there. Like, so, I mean, no emotional conversations, nothing like that for me.
Sure.
Because
I think
protecting that.
those even apply even not married too.
for
Personally,
sure.
I think
I
those
agree.
are
Would you
good
guys say that you
safeguards.
guys have the
Yeah.
same boundaries?
Agree.
Yeah,
100%. Well,
absolutely.
and one of the things that we talked about, or some of them y'all talked about in a previous episode, was this idea of like whatever Billy Graham's rule was of like, okay, I'm not gonna be in a closed off space with somebody with a woman. I'm not, I'm gonna be careful about these things. And one of the things that like growing up, my dad was always very adamant about was like be above reproach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
I define friendship differently. I think that like
Yeah.
there's a couple of different levels, right? So
Totally.
like my closest people, like my 3, not that I'm Jesus, but like my 3 are like those are gonna be
Peter,
guys, and
James,
probably even
John.
my
Yeah.
12 are gonna be guys, right?
Yeah.
But then outside of that, like I've got plenty of friends
Totally.
that are.
Yeah.
You look at the
women.
life of Jesus. It's,
Right.
He has the 3 to 12, and then he has women that also travel with him.
And I think that like we in the church we get so afraid of like we always have this phobia of like, okay, if I'm a friend with them, then like something's gonna go wrong physically, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, well then I do need to have those boundaries. I need to be careful. I need to be above reproach. And so when something goes off in my head where it's like, oh, like that's not a good scenario, or like they just shared something that they probably shouldn't share with me, or I feel like I'm about to share something that I need to what's like flee from that situation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Lord is very clear, like flee from sexual immorality.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if I see myself leading down a road where it's like, okay, I'm going to say something that might draw a connection on a like a emotional level, it like my physical connection with them, there's going to be like this quotes deficit, right? And so it's going to want to catch up to that,
Totally.
and that can lead to so many issues.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then I got to be careful. What am I saying with my words? Emotionally, how am I relating? Spiritually, where am I at? And I want to be, I want to be honest with everybody. I don't want to be living a fake life and be like, oh, like my life's great, awesome all the time, right? But I'm also not going to be super deep with everyone.
Yeah. I think that's. Were you gonna say something?
No, you can go ahead.
I think it's really important to be self-aware too.
Yeah.
Because like for me, I'm like a very deep person, so it's easy for me to slip into those kind of conversations and stuff. So I know because I'm that way, I have to keep like different boundaries a lot of times because it can, and even in a pure way, it can slip into that. But then you have to address that eventually.
Yeah, and
so.
we've been going through a series also in our like local group of young adults that we're going through like friendships and dating. And this last week we talked about like how actually those boundaries, they're not just to like keep you from sinning, because that's not our heart. Our heart's just not like, okay, so I can't sin.
Right.
So what's the closest I can get until I cross the line of like, okay, I'm sinning here, I'm crossing a boundary, I'm cheating, like all those different things. It's actually like, no, I want to glorify the Lord with my life. I want to have friendships that are going to like bring me closer to Him.
Right.
So what are the things that I can establish in my life and those boundaries that are going to keep me safe in a position that I'm not even close to like crossing that line, like that's the heart of everything. And we also talked about something that you just mentioned. They are the scales, and we have like physical, emotional, and spiritual. And once you have, so if I start talking with someone and we're like super deep into like spiritual stuff, or super deep into like, we're talking about our emotions and different things, but we're actually, so if we have the 3 scales here, once the 2 scales are up top, if I have the emotional and spiritual one, the physical one's going to try and catch up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I end up developing a relationship that maybe I was not even looking for. And it doesn't even necessarily mean I'm attracted to the person or anything. It's just the scales trying to catch up, And I think it's just so important for us to also be self-aware and like, okay, no, what am I... Like, I know myself, so what are the boundaries and the things that the Lord's telling me that's going to keep me safe in that position, Just
good.
like, yeah.
Well, I guess
And-
on that, do we want to talk about some of those, like, some applicable things from that? Like, what are some things, I know that you were saying, like, okay, I don't thing that we can be friends. But I think that from that perspective, like, what are some things
Yeah.
that we do to foster some type of relationship, right? 'Cause I think that's so necessary. And so there's so many examples of that. I mean, I pulled from Romans here of Paul. He's just shouting out like greetings to those people in ministry that he's
Yeah.
doing ministry with, right? And there's men and women in this group, people he's calling dear friends.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so what does it look like to do ministry and to do friendships, or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
relationships
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the church in a godly way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to start? I can.
Yeah. I
come
mean,
with
I
the
think
points.
I think we're called to love, you know?
Yeah.
And so that is a blurred line at times. I think of like Proverbs 17, where it says like, love, a friend loves at all times,
Yeah.
but a brother is built for adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that circle of like, I'm not letting them pass a certain amount of or inner circle. And so to build those, it's like I can always love. I can love at distance,
Yeah.
checking in on their heart. How you doing?
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
That's so
it's
good.
important to like
Yeah.
protect that for sure.
Yeah.
I even opened the verse in here. It says like John 15:12 and says, "This is my command: love each other in the same way I have loved you." So
Yeah.
I also, when I'm looking for friends, I'm looking for someone that loves God first and have a friendship with God first, so they can know even how to listen to the Lord, to which boundaries they need to establish in
Yeah.
my relationship as well. You know, I think that's like a great guide. But
Yeah, I think one thing that can become like a problem or can slip into like crossing those boundaries or those levels is something that I've noticed a lot, like in the church scene, young adult scene specifically. It's like you start hanging with someone and immediately it's like, what's your testimony? And immediately you go deep.
There's
That's
their
right,
thing.
always.
These
Yeah.
deep things that the
Yeah.
Lord's brought you out of, and like there's
Yeah.
no way you can talk about life to death or death to life transformation and what the Lord's done without going deep, right? And so you can build emotional soul ties like so fast
Yeah.
with that, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's become like a normal thing. But
Yeah.
then when things don't sort out in one person's favor how they like desired it to be, then it's like, oh, we have this emotional, we bonded over this
Yeah.
sharing of what the Lord's done in our lives, and now what happened, it's
Yeah.
not there anymore. So that can
Right.
be a really dangerous thing. I think obviously sharing testimonies is amazing, but just being aware of you can go really deep emotionally with someone, especially talking about deep things that the
Yeah.
Lord's brought you
Yeah.
out of and what he's doing in your life.
Yeah.
I think you need to have discernment with that.
Totally.
I mean,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
just from a broader context of sharing a testimony, a lot of times I look at it and I see myself wanting to add certain details,
Yeah.
almost from a place of comparison.
Well,
Yeah.
Of being like, man, like
good.
this is something that happened in my life, something the Lord delivered me from, and like oftentimes I don't need to share the nitty gritty details.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not necessary
Yeah.
for maybe a broader group of people. Like maybe there
Yeah.
there are definitely some people close
Yeah.
in my life
Yep.
that need to know those parts so that they can encourage me and call me higher, right? But not everybody needs to know that.
Yeah.
And so having that discernment to be like, okay, Lord, what is and is appropriate
Yeah.
for having an honest relationship,
Yeah.
and how can I still tell the story of what you've done in my life
Yeah.
It's good.
to the right amount of depth
Right.
without creating
Yeah,
those ties and
yeah.
sharing too
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
right? And then putting myself in this dangerous situation
Yeah.
where now I've shared so much and now something's going on in my spirit where it's wanting something that I shouldn't be wanting because I
Right.
shared too much.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got like the 1 minute version, the
Right.
10-minute
The-
version,
Right.
then
the
the 2 hour.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Exactly.
Yeah.
there's levels to it
Yeah.
for sure.
One thing I would say too is like we're talking so much about self-awareness and like discernment. If you feel like, okay, I'm at a stage that I'm not actually, like, I'm a teenager, I'm still finding those things out, like involve yourself, like surround yourself with community. Let
Yeah.
them speak into your life. Like, okay, maybe you think it's okay for you to go that deep, and let the people around you, your leaders, your authorities, the authorities in your life go, hey, actually, I don't think that's a good idea, and listen to them. Because we talked in the episode about accountability, about also like having a person that you trust more than yourself.
Yeah.
So like listen to that person, you know, don't just like, okay, I do that to check something on the checkbox list, you know, no, listen to that person and let them speak into your life of like, okay, what are the things that actually for you are good for this season as well, you know. There are people that even seasons, like there are people that, okay, I'm at a season that I actually need to draw back and not gonna have as many friends anymore, like right now, because I need to work on things inside of me. And there are other seasons that I'm like, okay, no, like right now I feel like I'm at a season that I'm so good at, like I'm self-aware, I know how to establish boundaries. I know that if I'm in the middle of a crisis, I'm not going to pick up my phone and call Kolby or Matt or Josiah. Like I'm going to call my community, my girls, my leaders, my authority. But I also know that if I need help, like later, I can just send Matt a text and say, hey, can you pray for me? I'm going through a hard time.
Right.
And that's all. Like that's what you also were talking about like I know how much to share. I know that I'm not like, because I also don't want people to think like, okay, so I can't share anything, you know, like, okay, so I'm not texting guys, I'm not talking with guys because, oh my God, I'm going to cross the line, you know, like
it almost implies this idea that we only see people of the opposite sex as objects of sex, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but that so degrades people and like God's intent for relationship. And so how can I be mature and be responsible with the way like that I invite people into my life, but like, if I'm going to ask Kolby for prayer, I might share more than if I ask you for prayer. And that's right. I think that's right to do, you know, and it's still good for me to reach out and to ask prayer for people. Prayer is super powerful, but it's not responsible of me to expose my heart in a certain way to a girl than it would be
I'm gonna
to another brother.
I'm gonna be aware of how to.
And I think a lot of what we're talking about too applies in a one-on-one context, because like in a group setting with a community, there's safety in numbers, there's accountability, there's witness. And I think especially like being in ministry, it's just smart to have that as a safeguard, you know, because no one can, it's not a he said, she said type of deal. You can say, no, this was what happened in front of a group of people. We didn't go this deep in the conversation and this other person was involved. Whereas if it's just one-on-one, you know, that's when we see a lot of stuff happen, especially with a lot of things coming out in ministry right now. That's what a lot of the situations are. It's one-on-one, you know, and so who do you believe?
I've talked a lot about you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
Go on.
like within that community, within the community setting, and we have blind spots. We have natural blind spots to be like, oh, maybe I get too touchy, or I share too much, or get too much. Like, it's easy for me to share my heart a little bit easier or something. Within that community, it's like we have to be open. We have to be open for correction as well, and have a heart posture of like, okay, maybe I don't see that I get too handsy or that I share too easily, but because my friend who saw this shared that and told me about it, and it's like, okay, I'm open for that correction. I can adjust and do it different next time. You know?
I want to bring up one question for us to discuss, and then we can close up. But is if you're friends with someone, you guys with a girl and myself with a boy, and feelings change on one of the sides, what do you do? If it's with you guys, like you're friends with a girl, your feelings are going to change, what do you do?
Change in what way?
Changing like, oh, I'm just friends and now I'm actually like want something with you. I want something more.
I think in all things in this realm, communication is the most important thing. And the most trouble you can get in is when you start assuming things. And so like if feelings are changing on your end, then I think it's your responsibility to communicate it, especially if it's just a friend level. Now, if it's a dating, you know, or marriage situation, you're looking to the husband to take the lead on spiritual matters and stuff. But we're talking just friendships. I think it's important if you feel something inside it, and I think there should be a conviction to be able to communicate that clearly.
Yeah. Do you guys? I would say in a girl's perspective, I would say the same thing, communicate. Because the girl, I believe, and I might be rocked by that, but that we not should be the one pursuing the guys. We can show like, okay, I'm available, but the guy should be the one like pursuing the girl. And in the girl's perspective, because we cannot be the ones like the guys that's like, okay, I'm going to pursue you right now, is be clear. Like, Brown, forgot her first name, Brene Brown. She says, clear is kind and clear is unkind. So be clear. Like, be okay with having hard conversations. They're going to make you uncomfortable because you don't want also to, like, keep that thing inside of you and you're, like, hiding that feeling. That's not kind to the other person.
Right.
Like, be clear that your expectations or your feelings have changed and just say, like, and I'm not saying, like, okay, pour your heart out again.
No, yeah.
But it's like, hey, can I actually talk with you? Like, I started looking at you in a different way because then your boundaries probably are also going to have to change.
Yeah.
Because if you have a friendship with that
Right.
guy, he probably doesn't think that you like him and you don't like him. But if something changed, your boundaries, like, okay, I'm probably not going to text you as much anymore, or I'm not going to call you because now I have feelings on one side, you know?
right.
So be clear, be kind, and honestly, it's the best thing you can do. It's the best thing. Don't be afraid to, like, get hurt, you know?
And if you're really friends, that shouldn't really be a tough
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
Too, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It should be chill and
I got a
good.
quick thing. Do we have a couple moments still?
Yeah, go.
We've talked a lot about, like, things to be careful about. Okay. So I guess my question is, and I've got some thoughts of my own, but my question is, there's so many things we need to be careful about. Why not? Why try? Why bother? Right? What are some of the ways, some of the good benefits of, like, cultivating good friendships, men with women, women with men, in a godly way?
Yeah. I think that's so important. It's a great question. And I think it brings up, we were discussing even earlier here, that men and women, they carry something different. And there is a side of each one of them that sometimes we need. Like, the girl has that part of, like, nature, like, just come closer. I'm not saying that I'm going to come closer. I'm going to take care of you, let me pet your head.
I know what you're getting at.
But there are different perspectives that boys and girls have, and that can enrich someone's life so much.
Right.
So there are parts of life that you're probably not going to be able to see because it's not your default that a girl's going to be able to see. And there are parts for guys that it's like, it's not in the nature of the man to see those things, and the girl's going to see, and vice versa, you know? So I think as a body of Christ, like, even when you look at, like, why do we need different people in the church?
Right.
Yeah, just relationships with people in general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, because we have different perspectives, we have different things. We are, like, one body with, like, the
With
Lord.
different members.
Yeah,
Different
the
functions,
Lord
yeah.
loves diversity, you know, because
Yeah.
of how each and every single person can bring something up to the table. So I'm like, and again, like, we do want to talk about the boundaries, but also have fun, you know,
Fun.
like, enjoy, like, have friends. We're not trying to say,
But
like,
be
don't have friends,
responsible.
be responsible, but have friends,
What
you
is
know.
having fun?
Like, yeah, go out, go eat ice cream, like, go, you know.
I even think about, like, my sister too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it can be that a similar relationship like that. Like, I love hanging out with my sister, and we have a lot of fun, and
Right.
we're so different. But, like, we have a great relationship, and it's the same way, like a brother in Christ, a sister in Christ.
Exactly.
You know?
Where I was going
They
with
have
it.
different things that they bring to the table,
Right.
different things
Yeah.
that you can learn from them.
Right,
So,
but I think
Yeah.
also that, like, being made in the image of God,
Yeah.
we expose
Yeah.
those parts of God that, like, they give us another window into, like,
Yeah.
the character of God.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, man, that's so valuable, and I
Yeah.
wanna invest in that. you
yes.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that true friendship, it heightens that joy in the Lord, you know. And, like,
Yeah. Yeah. So can we have guys and girls friendship? Yes, we can.
Unless you're
Kolby,
Unless you're Kolby.
No.
Hey,
You
I'm
can't
chilling.
if it's gonna be your closest friend, but you actually can if it's gonna be
You're in
like,
the
with
70.
good boundaries.
You're 70.
You're the
No.
Hashtag 70 squad.
So, give us your perspective, maybe. Put here on the comments if you think it's okay. If it's not, like, we want to also hear your thoughts. And keep up with the channel, subscribe, like, all those weird different things that people do. We love you, and we cannot wait to see you in the next episode. I'll see you. Bye.